Chit Chat is sponsored by Fun Again Games, where everyone is welcome at our table, and your source for hard-to-find imports, liquidation games, new releases, and much more. Be sure to visit funagain.com to check it out. On episode 108 of Chit Chat, we're talking all about Marvel Snap because we just can't get enough of it. The cards, the combos, all those sinister locations. But if you're not into it, relax. We dive into board games too. Welcome back to Chit Chat. It's episode 108. It feels like it's been a while since 107, but it hasn't really been that long. In case you didn't look at the thumbnail, and I want to warn you, we're going to be talking wholeheartedly about Marvel Snap. Now, before you tune off and go, oh, that's not a board game, I'm not listening, just hear us out, because we've all been playing it quite a bit. I would say Ryan's probably leader of the pack.
I don't know.
Well, I know.
Level-wise, maybe.
we talked about the stats beforehand. Emily's up there. Yeah. I'm trailing, for sure. But we're all having fun with it, and we wanted to tell you about it in case you hadn't checked it out. And even if you had checked it out, you can just enjoy us talking about Marvel Snap. But if you haven't checked it out, it's a free-to-play card battler in the Marvel Universe on iPhone, Android, and Steam as well now. It's just a pure joy to play, win or lose for me anyway.
And we will talk a little bit of games we've played recently are not necessarily Marvel
We will do
Snap.
that. We had a Halloween party recently, played some games at the Halloween party. We've also played some games away from the Halloween party. I have some video game related, speaking of Marvel Snap, some video game related board gaming that I've done recently. Before we get to any of that though, we do have a winner from last episode. And that winner was for the game Beer and Bread.
Yes.
The code word was beer. We got somewhere over 100 entries last episode. Yeah. And the winner was Rick Hatcher. Now, Rick, I'm going to call you out.
Uh-oh.
Your name's down here. But you know where else his name was? It was twice in the email. And I thought at first, no, Rick Hatcher. No one's going to game the game and enter twice.
Two Rick Hatchers.
But it was, I believe, maybe his significant other, but it just came up as Rick Hatcher twice, but it was two different emails, so it wasn't from the same email account. So then I thought to myself, you know what? Good on you, Rick Hatcher. And it worked because you won.
So for the next one, recruit all your friends, all your family to say.
You can do that. But I reserve judgment to go, like, if I see 10 names in a row, no. If you create Gmail accounts just to win a board game from Chit Chat, I don't know.
What are we giving away today? 1,000 copies of Marvel Snap. In fact, if you're watching it right now,
we are giving away free copies of Marvel Snap. In fact, you just won. Get on your device and download it for free. No, we're not sponsored by Marvel Snap.
What are we?
But we are giving away another capstone game. This is one we played recently. I think we even talked about it last episode.
Yeah,
maybe.
we did.
And that was Rise. I don't think it's quite out yet, but this is a game.
On the rise?
If you haven't, it is on the rise.
That tracks.
It's going to be a rare episode of Chit Chat, folks. No, we talked about it last time, and we did talk about it kind of being tracks the game.
Yes.
Therefore, the code word is going to be...
Tracks.
Tracks.
Yay.
So, email us at mvmcontest@gmail.com with the subject line tracks for your chance to win a copy of Rise. And speaking of which, we are probably going to have some gameplay of Rise up on the channel, not really soon, but sometime in the near future. We're going to do maybe like a round one playthrough for Rise so that you can see it in action.
That'll be nice.
So,
Marvel Snap.
who wants to talk? Because I'm just going to play.
I do want to say one thing before we start Marvel Snap to address a lot of people's concerns. This is the number one concern I hear about Marvel Snap.
Oh, I was getting concerned
Well, you mentioned this too, that it's a free-to-play game. And the number one thing that I appreciate about Marvel Snap is that you can't really pay money to get better. You're not paying. There's really no begging for money in this game. There's no paywall that you hit. There's no endless ads where they say buy this boost for $5.99.
No, it doesn't hit you over the head with it.
There's no energy that you have to spend where you can only play 6 matches a day unless you spend money to buy more energy. Like, I'm used to playing mobile games where after every single thing it's like
watch an ad to do this, and
you got gold.
Ads.
Pay $1.99 to double it. Like, you don't even really get asked to spend money in Marvel Snap. which I think is actually for me a really huge plus for the game.
And I want to caveat that a little bit and tell me if you think I'm wrong about this. But you do have the option to spend money to get these blue credits, and you spend the blue credits along with some other things to get new effects on the cards, and they're purely cosmetic. But as you get those effects, it does increase the number of cards you're unlocking as you sort of upgrade the cards cosmetically, which is one of the things that I think it's the one thing most people enjoy about the game is unlocking more and more cards and new cards. So in a way, you could spend money to increase the rate at which you're unlocking those cards.
Yeah, but you have to have the boosters for the cards too, which you have to play.
That is true.
You could pay money for the season pass, which gives you a lot of boosters for certain cards.
Which I did do. I did buy the season pass because I like season passes.
I did buy one.
And I do feel like when I'm playing a game this much that's free, it was like $9.99 I think for that, and so I don't mind throwing that money at it. I haven't spent a dime more than just getting the season pass. So that's I've
spent nothing. I spend nothing on this
game.
And
I think people are wondering if that's viable. And I kind of agree with what you're saying. You could spend money, buy a bunch of credits, but you don't really have to do that because you'll earn those credits so naturally as you're playing. You complete missions every day. You just get credits just for winning. Like I have so many credits to spend all the time. I haven't had a problem. Like, I've never felt the need to spend money buying credits.
I will say this. You can fast track it a little bit by spending money. But, like, David, you bought the season pass, and I haven't. And I am further along than David is because I spend my time doing my exercises in the morning on my arm, playing it one-handed. So I was able to get further faster.
Played more.
Yeah. I do like the season pass they have because you can unlock special variants for cards and things like that. It is cool.
It does give you opportunity. One thing I would say about the payments, the opportunities they give you to pay money aren't to win. So it's not pay to win for sure.
Right.
So, and even the ladder ranking system they have, you're typically, if I understand this correctly, you're going to be playing players that are in the same rank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ish.
Yeah, well, and beyond that even, for the lower ranks, it kind of actually starts you off with bots. Mm-hmm. So you're actually kind of just playing AI for your first couple ranks because it's kind of getting you
into the habit.
But then when you start getting up to like gold and platinum and some of the higher ranks, you're playing against people that have the same cards as you, and it's split up into like 3 different card pools. As your collection level goes up, when you get into a new card pool, then you start playing against those people as well. So you're playing with people that have roughly the same card access that you do too.
True.
So it's not like walking into Friday Night Magic and playing with a guy with $500 cards on the table.
Yeah.
Like you're playing with people that have access to the same pool you do.
And I want to back up for a second because I just realized we're sitting here talking about it, and if you haven't played it, you're sitting there going, what is it? What do you do? So I'm going to try the almost impossible task of explaining it so that you understand it, but so the people who know how to play it don't get bored with this explanation.
Good luck.
Here goes.
It should be a pretty quick explanation.
So it's a very simple game. It's a card battler where you're playing at 3 different locations, and you're effectively, at a very base level, trying to have more power on your side than the other player has. And the cards themselves have innate power that builds up to that number, but all the cards also have a lot of wild powers that affect that and manipulate the power. You know, the cards do all sorts of crazy things and effects, whether you're moving cards, you're destroying cards, all sorts of craziness, trying to win 2 of those 3 locations by the end of 6 rounds. And the rounds are just literally playing a certain amount of cards associated with the energy, I think, is what they call it, that you have to play. In round 1, you have 1 energy. In round 2, you have 2. And again, even that can vary sometimes because there might be a location that says everyone has 3 more energy this round or something crazy like that. At the end of the 6 rounds, if you've got 2 of the 3 locations, you win. That's as simple as this. It takes what? Anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes tops to play a match?
It's not much. They're not long matches, which is something I really appreciated about it.
What's the shortest match you've played? Without someone retreating.
I was going to say, you can retreat the first turn.
I've dropped a single card and had them retreat.
But I've been upstairs, and Brian was like, do you want to go for a walk? And I was like, oh, okay, sure, I just started a game. By the time I was downstairs putting on my shoes, I was done.
Yeah, they're quick.
That was the quickest for me.
They're super quick, and there's not like there's a ton of AP. You know, it's not like
you can't because you're timed too.
Right,
so if you, and I have done that, I've taken too long on a turn, and it's like you're out of time, and I was like, no, I'm sorry.
No, it's quick to play, 6 rounds, and the stakes are not high for a match. What I do like that you didn't talk about, the fact that it's called Marvel Snap, or the reason it's called Marvel Snap, is because You can literally choose to snap at a given point, and every game is worth possibly 2 rank points.
Yeah.
If you snap, it becomes worth 4, so the stakes go up.
They're doubled.
If both parties snap, it goes up to 8, and 8 is actually, that's quite a lot.
It's a big jump. You can go up almost a full rank.
Almost a full rank in one match. And so I kind of like that. It's almost a push your luck. It's almost a bluff. If you're in a tight spot and you can't win, sometimes that snap is enough to get him to retreat.
It is true.
It
That's
happens.
possible. And there's one other thing related to that I wanted to say. The whole game, not just the snapping feature, has a lot of mind games, because one thing we didn't discuss is the fact that the cards are played simultaneously. So it's not like I'm playing cards and the opponent sees them and then they play. You play cards face down during any given round.
And then reveal.
And then once everyone's locked that in, they're revealed in a sequence based on who has the highest power, but they're revealed, and that reveal is a surprise. And so, for instance, one card to give you an idea, all the Guardians of the Galaxy cards, effectively, when they're revealed, it says, if your opponent played a card here, this card gets, +2 power, +3 power. It might steal a card from the other opponent, something like that. So there's these head games of going like, okay, here's the locations. They played here. I'll bet he's going to play here this round. And you can kind of do that sometimes based on what they've done. For instance, I'll play Hawkeye.
Yeah.
And Hawkeye makes it so the next card you play, if it's at that same location, Hawkeye gets a bonus to his power. So you can play Hawkeye, and your opponent might be thinking, well, he's clearly thinking he might play a card in that location next, so I'll play my Guardians of the Galaxy card there. And it might be a great, getting into the opponent's head to do that.
Well, and there's mind games too with the locations, right? So each of the locations at the start of the game, one of the location reveals, the second turn the next location reveals, and the third turn the third location reveals. So sometimes too, I get in my own head where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this low cost on the one that hasn't revealed yet. By the time it reveals, it's like, you can only play one card here. And I'm like, oh no,
I've had that happen.
it's only 2 power. Like someone's definitely going to beat it.
Or like I'll play Squirrel Girl on turn 1, and she puts a squirrel at each location, and then that one flips, and it's like I've got one squirrel. That's my one card I can play there.
And so then sometimes it psychs you out, but they do give you a nice tip, where it's like the location of the day is going to be this, and so you'll see it more often, not necessarily in every game, but you can start kind of crafting decks around oh, this is a cool location with this guy. Maybe I'm going to start using this guy more often and see if I can get that location to come up. But it goes into the deck crafting as well. It's super easy to just make more decks and more decks.
Well,
that's the fun part.
The decks are only 12 cards.
Yes.
So that's the thing, is unlike Magic or anything where you're talking about a 60-card deck and you have multiples of cards, this is 12 cards, and every card is different.
Yes.
So you're just you could start just as a Marvel fan and go, oh, I'll put this team together. It might be awful, in terms of the synergies in the gameplay, but it's just fun to sort of experiment with new characters. I've used sort of my OG deck the whole time, and as I've unlocked new characters, I've been like, I'll swap in this Power 4 card for this Power 4 card, because this one, when you play, you'll notice, oh, I'm not really utilizing this one I thought I might, so I'm going to ditch it and go this route. And we mentioned locations. I don't think we talked about this really thoroughly either. There's a wild variety of locations.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've ever played Smash Up, in a similar way, it's kind of like, in my opinion, if you've played a lot of board games, kind of like Smash Up. Also, I think kind of like Land, Air, and Sea. Don't you think? The little card game, not the big.
That's what I was thinking of. That big game, the one.
Is it Land, Air, and Sea? Am I saying
Heroes,
that right? Not the
Heroes
one.
of Land, Air, and Sea. I know what you're talking about.
The 2-player card game from Arcane Wonders, where you're just playing at locations. It's very similar, quite honestly, but because this is digital, it blows it
huge,
Well,
wide open. I don't know how many locations are, but they
awesome.
do crazy.
It does stuff you couldn't do in a physical board game.
Sure.
Period.
Oh, for sure.
Which is, I think, a huge draw when people say, well, okay, it's not really a board game. I mean, it feels like a card game, and I wish I could play a physical card game that could do some of this stuff. But you've got cards that modify you've got cards that you can play that will modify your deck. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cards that you haven't even drawn yet, they'll come out stronger. Or cards that weaken cards in your opponent's hand. And all of this stuff that would be a tracking nightmare, except for the fact that it's all digital and takes care of all that for you.
And a lot of the effects, too, are really cool thematically. So if you're a Marvel fan, think of ones. I have one, but think of others. The There's a lot of cards that destroy other cards, and there's a Carnage card that when you play it, it consumes basically all of your other cards that you've already played at that location. But Carnage gains 2 power for each card. So if you play some level, power 1 cards there, you're going to gain some power there. Not only that, but each location can only hold 4 cards on any given side. So once you've played 4 cards at a location, it's typically done. You're typically not going to do too much else to that location for a while anyway. But you play Carnage as the 4th card, he eats the other 3, and now you've opened up a lot more slots, so you still have a chance at that location if you were behind.
What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say Mantis, because she has that cool little animation where like her little tentacles come out, and she gets to see something in your deck and draw that. And she's a Guardian of the Galaxy, so it's if someone's also played something there that same turn. And I just think it's cool, the little animations they've done too, to kind of be like, hey, this character is unique, and this is something that they're doing alone.
The animations are so cool, and I love if you play Ant-Man, when you drag him out, he like shrinks down.
He's
and then
tiny, and then you place him, and he gets back big again.
And my favorite, thematically, is Multiple Man. I don't know if you've seen Multiple Man, but when he, which is an X-Force character, he can clone himself. So when you move him from one location to another, if you can find a way to move him, he leaves an image behind, and that animation of like him splitting and like taking up both spots is pretty cool too.
Yeah, I mean, some of the animations, there's so many of
Rocket
them.
with all his guns coming
Rocket
out.
pulls out a bunch of guns. My favorite, and this is sort of the jerkiest card that I use, Yondu.
Oh, yeah.
So Yondu will destroy the top card of your opponent's deck. And like we said, there's 12 cards. And if I take away a key card in your strategy, it could be pretty devastating. So you play Yondu, he whistles, and his little arrow comes flying out, and it shows their card get drawn, and the arrow goes through it, and it gets destroyed. Yeah. Also, I don't know how many times I've taken Hawkeye out or Cyclops, and if you hold them out, Cyclops just shoots his beam, and if you move it over to the player score, it actually hits the player score.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, it hits the player score.
That's awesome.
And Hawkeye just starts randomly shooting arrows out everywhere.
So I do want to ask you guys about the deck building, because I'm a big fan of deck building. I played games like Magic the Gathering, and you build these complex decks usually around a theme or a mechanic. And Marvel Snap kind of breaks it down into like 6 mechanics. There's like discard and move and ongoing and reveal. To make it a little easier, do you guys, when you're building decks, do you generally just like stick to one of those concepts, or do you like mix and match different types of cards? Or
I definitely, when I create a new deck, I'll use those filters and just do like on reveal. Okay, show me all the on reveal ones. And honestly, at this point, there's too many for them to be in one deck anyway, so I'm kind of picking and choosing. But also, I have a deck, and I was telling David this beforehand, where it's just like all the new cards I've gotten. And I've kind of been like, this is cool. I haven't seen this card before. Or like, I haven't played this card much. And so sometimes I'm not playing to win. I'm really just playing to like,
explore.
Yeah, and to have fun and to be like, oh my gosh, this seems like a really cool ability. I'm going to put maybe one thing that I think might synergize with it. But otherwise, that deck, it's just called Deck 9 in my phone because I couldn't think of what to name it. And when I play it, I'm always like, what is in this deck? Oh yeah, this card. Oh, this is a cool card. Oh, this is fun.
I would love for Marvel to have a new comic team called Deck 9. It's just a bunch of random new characters.
I mean, the stakes are so low. If nobody's snapping, you're not really losing a lot. So there's no reason not to just play to have fun and experiment.
Yeah, this, as we've talked on the channel before, I don't really play to win too much. This game's perfect for me.
I will say, too, that I think it's a little bit easier, too, to tell what's going wrong with the deck when you're playing and you're like, okay, this is my 3rd loss in a row. What's going wrong? You can usually tell, like, oh, I didn't get any 1-cost cards or 2-cost cards the first 2 rounds, so I didn't get to play anything. Well, that kind of felt bad, so maybe I need to add more low-cost cards. Or, since it's so short, you can see what your opponent's doing and be like, oh, that looks super cool. I wonder if I can do that. Whereas like in a game like Magic, or even like when I was playing Hearthstone, like those decks are bigger, and it can be, you're not just like willy-nilly creating one of those decks, right? You have to commit to a strategy. In this, it's much easier to be like, oh, he just played Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. I'm going to try that in one of my decks and just see how that works for me or not.
Yeah, I built a Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur deck. And again, this is something I really like about how thematic the game is, because those two are a pair in the comics. Like Moon Girl rides Devil Dinosaur. But they work so well because, he gets bonus points, bonus strength for the number of cards in your hand, and she duplicates your hand, so you have a giant hand size.
Oh.
And so they really synergize. And I like
cool.
that. Like you said, Carnage. Another one that I saw somebody do was Heimdall. When you play Heimdall, he moves
everybody.
Everybody. And when I saw that card in a vacuum, I was like, Okay, that seems like
I
difficult
know, when
to
you
plan.
read it, you're like, okay, what does that
But
mean?
then when it was played against me, and I was winning these locations, and he just shifted everybody, and then he had cards like Vulture that gets bonuses when he moves. He had Multiple Man who leaves a copy behind, and so like everything shifted, and I just saw all the powers just going off, and I was like, oh, now I recognize how good Heimdall is.
Yeah.
But that's also a very thematic power for Heimdall to be moving everybody.
That is super cool.
They did a really good job with that.
Yeah, they've done a really good job too. We'd mentioned like sort of the daily locations. I think it's on, I want to say Thursday, they have a featured location that lasts for a couple days. Last week it was a location called Bar Sinister. And I don't think it had been in the game until then, right?
No.
So they introduced it, and it was, I think, I don't know the percentage, but it's something like it's going to show up in 40% or so of the games that you play.
Felt like all the time.
It did feel like all the time, and some people loved it, and then some people stopped loving it. But what it did was, when you played a card there, it filled that location with that card.
Mr. Sinister clones people. It's just
right.
It feels so thematic.
But it was so cool because like Yondu, the first time I saw the location and Yondu is my starting hand, I was like, oh, this is going to put this person on tilt. I played Yondu. I destroyed the top 4 cards off of their deck.
In a 12-card deck.
In a 12-card deck. I mean, it could be devastating.
Yeah.
And when it comes to locations like that, and just this game in general, I think it's worth talking about that it's not for everyone. A lot of people don't like just how zany and random and chaotic and completely unbalanced this game is. It's very luck-driven, incredibly unbalanced. People are going to be able to counter you at all times. And in fact, it's what a lot of people might call very poor game design. But...
Not us. But people.
If the game was any longer than 5 minutes, I might understand those points.
Sure.
But when your match is just 5 minutes long and your stakes are like one or two rank points out of the 10 it takes to get to the next level, I don't feel the same way because I can play a game that feels crazily unbalanced and lose through no fault of my own, like that location ego that plays your hand for you.
Yeah.
It can be you just lose. And I can see where that would be frustrating, but it's like, oh, I lost 1 mark. 1 tick to my next level.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal.
And then the next game I'll win and I'll snap and I'll get 8.
Yeah.
So
and not every game is that random, right? Some games are more planned, but there are lots of random elements to it. So sometimes you get like play a random card to each location, and theirs was a 6-cost card that is 10 points, and mine was a 1-cost card that was negative, and I'm like, really, guys, really?
that's part of the fun of the game.
Yeah.
Because even
that anything could happen.
Like I've had literally that same situation, and I pulled like Squirrel Girl, and they got like the Infininaut, who's like 20 strength, and I'm like, well, all right, I guess I'm gonna lose.
Yeah, Ryan's mentioning cards here that I have not even seen.
Oh, you haven't seen the Infininaut?
No. So the way the game works is as you go up in ranks or card collection levels.
Card collection level.
It has a few different stats. If you go up, you have access to new pools of cards. I'm still in pool 1. You're in pool 2?
I'm in pool 2.
And you're in pool 3. Yeah, and that's it, right? Is there
and
more
it doesn't
pools?
tell you, like, now you're in this pool, right?
No, it doesn't.
It's behind the scenes. But you're only playing with people that have the same cards as you. And you still have to unlock the cards. But you know what the thing is, like, even the basic cards you start with are viable all the way through.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can play your starting deck, like you said, you still use most of your starting deck.
Yeah, this is definitely not a game where, like, you're going to never use old cards.
Yeah.
You've said wildly unbalanced. There are cards that are better than other cards. But in some ways, they're so very similar. I think everyone's going to have a sort of a tier list where they're like, yeah, no one uses these cards hardly much at all.
But why not?
Because they're pretty basic.
Use them for fun. Do you have a favorite card?
I think my favorite card is probably either Nightcrawler or Scarlet Witch. Oh. And that's they're not in every deck I play. I think Scarlet Witch is so much fun because she is chaotic. She's so chaotic, right? She changes the location to a different location, and you never know what's going to happen, right? So I can basically be like, this location isn't working for me. It's working really well for them. Scarlet Witch is perfect. We're just going to roll the dice and see what happens. And I love that chaotic energy in a deck. And I also really like Nightcrawler because he can move, and that... Just like that tiny flexibility at a 1-cost card is so nice that I've still put him in like further decks I've made because I've been like, it's just really nice to know that at any point later in the game, maybe he gets boosted a little bit and like, you never know what I'm going to do. Am I going to keep him there? Am I going to move him? Who knows?
I think you just made Just Tiff from the Discord. I think you made her day by saying Scarlet Witch.
She's a lot of fun.
I saw her post, actually. She finally unlocked her card collection.
So I assume Tiff is playing?
Oh, yeah. I think most of our Discord, a lot of people on our Discord are playing.
Yeah, we'll have to start a Marvel Snap channel in the Discord potentially.
I love Nightcrawler too. I love the whole move, like with the Iron Fist and the Heimdall and the cards that get stronger when you move to their space. I forget the guy's name that gets stronger if you move cards to his space.
Oh, Craven.
Craven, thank you. Craven the Hunter. Yeah, it's a fun kind of deck to play.
Yeah, so if you haven't tried Marvel Snap and you're not completely bored of us sitting here talking about it, definitely download it right now and check it out.
Can I just make a quick pitch too? That I think even if you're not usually into these types of games, even if this isn't something that you're like, okay, that's totally up my alley, or I love Marvel, or I love decoration, it's a super simple game, right? So I was even telling my sister, like, you should download the app. I'm going to download it next time I take your phone because it's so easy and the tutorial process like really walks you through it and you
Very
really
much
like
so.
Even if you're like I'm super scared about crafting decks, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to be like totally over my head, you will not. You will win like all your first matches because you're playing against bots. And you can take it really casually, right? So like the ranking system that it uses, if you're like I'm not super intense about this, so I'm probably going to lose a lot, you will get to a point where you're at a low enough rank that you won't be losing anymore, right? So, like, you can still have fun no matter what kind of level you want to invest into this game.
Yeah, they've done a great job with it, so try it out. If you're playing, let us know. Join our Discord and let us know, and we'll start a channel for all of us to sit there and talk about this game endlessly.
Tell us your favorite combos in the comments below, too.
Yes, absolutely. I need to get better.
Help us out.
Enough of Marvel Snap.
No, it's not.
Okay, maybe not, but we're not going to talk about it anymore. Maybe. We're going to talk about some of the games we've been playing. I'll start.
Okay.
I played, speaking of video games, I played Darkest Dungeon, which is also, and I'm not talking about the video game, I'm talking about the board game version of Darkest Dungeon. If you're not familiar, Darkest Dungeon is, I think, available mostly just on Steam. I don't know if it's on the consoles.
I think it's just...
and it is I've never played the video game version of it.
I have not either.
I've sunk like 100 hours into the video game.
But it's sort of like turn-based sort of RPG, right? Where you've got your team, and it's got a really interesting graphical style where it's like, you know,
it's 2D,
two-dimensional, and you're facing the enemies, and you're just going kind of like in a Slay the Spire sort of way, right? Where you can continue to progress.
Yeah, and your characters die a lot, and you have to recruit new characters constantly throughout the course of the game, and then start them over. And it's a really, really smart video game.
Yeah, so the board game version of it, I don't know how much I can relate it to the video game version, but it is laid out in a very similar fashion, but it is a dungeon crawl. So the one aspect this has is there is that sort of like, not overworld, but that sort of like flowchart looking map, like you have in the game where you're like, okay, we're going to go to this room next, and then there's an encounter. You do that in this game, and some of those rooms are as simple as like, okay, everyone has to roll 2 dice to explore the next room. Okay. It's cooperative. You're saying, okay, do we want to explore? And then someone might go, oh, let's scout. So you can scout, and everyone takes stress. So stress, I understand, is in the video game. And it is one of the most nasty things in the video game. You're constantly taking stress in this game. You also can take damage, but so everyone takes stress, and then you scout the rooms so you can flip them over to see what they are. That makes it better because when you explore them, now you have to roll fewer explore dice. Normally, everyone's rolling 2 explore dice, and they just do bad things. And it's very abstract. You roll them, and then you're spending resources off of other dice that you've rolled to sort of overcome them. But then the real meat of the game is when you get to a room where you have to have an encounter. Then you pull out a map, you put miniatures on it, and it has a really interesting system that I've never seen. It's very streamlined, but also felt sophisticated enough to be, entertaining to enthusiast gamers, or at least gamers that like dungeon crawlers. And the miniatures and everything, it's not like chibi, but they're definitely a slightly more cartoony look to them.
Do they copy the art style of the game?
Yeah, but it's not like ultra realistic looking.
Sure.
Okay.
They kind of have it's a very dark and demented, but also a very cartoony look to them. But I played it with my friend Bob. We went through one session. There's a huge campaign that I definitely want to dive into, and it's not the kind of game I would typically dive into.
I'd do it. I love that video game so much.
And the campaign's kind of cool because you do a session like that, and then you go back to what they call the Hamlet, which is the city you live in, and you can spend time in the hamlet to go to different locations in the hamlet, which is just this board that shows all these locations, like this city map. And then you go back to the next quest.
And that feels very faithful to the
It sounded like it to me, from what little I know of the video game. But I had a lot of fun with it. And, it's like I said, it's not my kind of thing, but I think I might try the campaign.
I want to try the campaign.
Nice. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So what have you been playing, Ryan?
Oh, well, Marvel Snap. No, but really, we had a Halloween party, a board game themed Halloween party where we got out all these Halloween themed games to play. And I got to play some, but one that I had pulled that I slid in there was Rear Window from Funko, which it's Hitchcock, whatever.
Oh no, I think it qualifies.
This ended up being my hit of the night, and I had played it once before, but I ended up playing it 5 times in one night. Once with you.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this game. This is a deduction game in the vein of like Mysterium or Dixit even or Obscurio, but I like it better than all of those games.
I think
Why is
so.
that?
Well, so if you haven't seen Rear Window, the whole idea, like he's laid up on a cast and he's looking through his binoculars at the apartment building across from him, and you have these 4 rooms, and each room has 2 windows. And they in the movie think that somebody's a murderer, right? Okay. And so your job in the game is you're playing as the people looking into the apartment buildings, and there are 4 days. And every day, the person, that clue giver, is going to place clues into each window. And so you'll get to look into each apartment building through 2 windows. And you're trying to deduce who lives in each apartment building and also what their kind of hobby or occupation is. Okay. And there's like 14 to choose from. Like, are they a writer or a gourmand or a globetrotter or heartbroken or whatever? And so me as the clue giver, I'm putting out these clues trying to direct you to try to figure it out. And you're going by color or objects that are in these things or whatever you think might get them to guess the right thing.
Very mysterious.
Very mysterious because you only have exactly enough cards in your hand, and you can close some windows so they can't see into them. So like if you really don't have a good clue, you can just like, I don't want to misdirect you. But like Mysterium, they're going to pick the one thing on the clue that you didn't want them to see.
Sure.
They're going to be like, oh, look, there's weights there. It's the athlete. And I'm like, well, that girl's crying. She's heartbroken, but they're like on the weights, right? But because it's over the course of 4 days, every day you get to tell them how many guesses you got right. Okay. And then you go on to the next day and you refill the rooms. And so there's this process of logical deduction where it's like, well, we got 5 right this day and 7 right this day. So we got 2 right, but we changed around these 4 things. So like you could actually logically figure out exactly which ones are right. Oh, and then like, because you know what you changed, And so by the turn 4, I've had games literally come down to the last day when they were like 7 out of 8 and they just couldn't figure out the last thing, and then they'd look back and then I'd see their minds replaying and be like, well, we thought it was this twice and it can't be, so it's, and then eventually they got it with like the last possible guess. And it's a really cool moment. It's one of those games where when you do get it, everyone kind of celebrates
and
a little bit.
And you can get it too. I mean, with the game I played, we got it in the second day.
Yeah, we had some good clues that day.
We had some really good clues. And one of the things I want to add to this, I don't think you mentioned, they're player powers. So I don't know if all the characters have player powers. All the characters have different player powers. When I played, I had a little red arrow. So once during the game, right, I could give the red arrow to the clue giver, and they could put it on a card pointing very specifically to the element that they were trying to use to communicate. So like if there was a red umbrella, they could point to it saying, it's red. So I'm talking about the red, So it was really, you think
I would like it?
I'm pretty certain you'd like it.
I love
it. Sounds like the type of game I would like. So.
I do think you would. It's not, so I don't know why I felt this while I was playing, but it was giving me some Decorum vibes in terms, because people are putting something out and hoping people understand
you're like,
why they're doing it. It was giving me that sort of vibe. It's not as much of a deduction game, I think, as Decorum, but it is.
I'll probably not compare it, but there is
it's somewhere between Decorum and Mysterium.
Sure.
And it does have deduction.
And I haven't played yet because every time we played, we had new people. But there's there's like an advanced game mode where it's not just figuring out who lives there and their hobby. Instead, it's like their relationship to a different character.
Oh, really?
So it's like this person is you have to figure out that they're having dinner, and also who are they having dinner with. This person has a rivalry. You have to figure out that there's a rivalry and also who they're having the rivalry with.
The other thing you didn't mention too, and this is kind of, I think, the big thing that connects it to the movie, is you can play without the murderer, or you could have the murderer there.
Yeah.
And when you do that, correct me if I'm wrong,
it makes it one versus many almost.
the clue giver doesn't want you to win. They want you to get all of the people in the apartment, but they don't want you to figure out which one of them is a murderer.
Yeah, you have to. They want you to correctly identify every occupation and every person except the one murderer.
Right.
Wow.
So they need to lead you on, but not ever let you quite get that last one.
It's like almost semi-co-op at that point in a
almost,
weird way.
Except you're leading them. Like there's one person, and you have to be careful because you can't let them process of elimination and be like, well, he's guiding us to everybody but this one. So it's playing with the murderer is tough. That's like an advanced game mode.
And you also don't know if you're playing with the murderer.
Yeah, there might not be a murderer.
Because the clue giver gets more than 4 characters and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they just randomly do it. So they know if the murderer's in play, but you don't. So,
I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah. I really think you would dig it.
You've got to play it once or twice without the murderer before you add it. And honestly, I think that this game is going to fly under a lot of people's radars for no reason other than it's a Funko Games, right?
Well, it's Funko Games.
It's Prospero Hall, who's really had a great track record.
It's also a very, it's Rear Window. It's kind of a strange license to just kind of pull out of nowhere. But it makes a lot of sense for this theme, and they really execute it well. I would say, I think if you like Mysterium, you'd probably like this maybe more.
I definitely like it more.
I definitely want to try it then. But yeah, when I saw Rear Window I was like,
That's how I felt. That's what I was like.
Right.
Like when they did the Shining board game, which this is way better than the Shining.
Yeah, don't dismiss this because it's just another licensed game, which I think is what
I think a lot of people
that's
did.
how I felt about it at first, but it is really good.
It's
Don't
very
sleep on
good.
it.
It's very good.
So, Emily.
At that same Halloween party, I played Shadowhunters, which is a hidden role game.
That's an old game, too.
It is. I had never played it before. And when I saw it and I saw the cards for it, I was like, I don't know that I'm going to enjoy this game very much.
It looks old school.
But I really did enjoy it. So you have the shadows and the hunters and some neutrals. And we played it at the max player count of 8 people. And it was actually a lot of fun. So on your turn, you're getting some kind of either equipment or you're getting to get a card that you can then give to somebody else. And it'll be like, if you're a hunter, lose 1 health. Or if you're not, just discard this card. So if I give that to David and he loses 1 health, I'm like, oh, David's a hunter. Now I have this piece of information. And you kind of gain information as you're going along that way. And each of you, as your player, you have a certain number of health that you have to get, that you can get down to before you die in or out of the game. But you also have a power you can reveal at any point. So on your turn, you can say, I'm going to reveal who I am. You'll see that I'm a shadow, and this is my power. And now I can start using my power, which is that, to deal damage, instead of dealing the difference between 2 dice, I can just roll 1 die, and you get all that as damage.
Oh, that could be a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And it's team-based, right? So
It's
you're trying to figure out who's on your team.
Exactly.
Because you don't want to eliminate your teammates.
Oh.
Yeah. But you also want to start doing damage to people because you don't want them to kill you off before you've even had the chance to figure out who's who. And then, like I said, there are a couple neutrals as well. So they've had their own kind of other objectives, which aren't as easy as just kill the other team. They're kind of like, kill this person at this time, or make sure that this thing happens while you're still in this location kind of thing. But it was a lot of fun. And it came down to a point where it was like, 1 shadow, 1 hunter, and she used her power, which was you can get an extra turn after this turn for every person who's died so far. So she had her turn plus 6 extra turns.
So she won?
She did win, but it took all 5 of them. Yeah. She was like, okay, because she kept just not rolling the right things, and he had some powers that were working in his favor, but she finally won. It felt really good, but it was this big culminating moment, and I thought it was a lot of fun.
Now, was that a win just for her or the team?
For the team.
Oh, cool.
Was that your team or were you Shadow?
That was my team,
okay.
yes.
Oh, of course.
I do remember when we filmed the Halloween episode, we talked about Halloween games. You said that social deduction games or games where you have to lie make you feel really tense.
I know, they do. They really do.
Did this one?
It did. I would say that I was one of the first people to go out, though, and I was someone who I think they knew early on, because I got one of those cards where it's like, if you're this, deal this damage. And the guy who did it for me was on the other team. So he was just like, okay, I'm just going to start attacking her. And I was like, okay. And then he used his special ability, which was I was at like 0 damage, and his special ability was bring someone up to 7. So it all of a sudden gave me all this damage, and he knew that he was right because he had just given me that card where I revealed who I was, basically. So I felt like I was kind of like the sacrificial lamb in the game, but it was helpful because then people knowing who I was kind of allowed other people to make other moves because they're like, oh, if Emily's on my team and he's on the other team and he's allying with this person, you kind of start like deducing who's going with who and
it's
what's
not
happening.
a super long game either, right?
No,
like
no,
it's
it
not
wasn't
as
super
quick
long
as Don't Mess with Cthulhu.
Sure.
But it's not going to be all night. Even with 8 players, it doesn't take forever.
Well, it sounds too like even when you're eliminated, you're still invested in the game.
Oh, I was definitely very invested still. Yeah.
The way they've built that's pretty smart. That you're part of a team, so you're not just like, oh, I'm going to go play something else.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, those are the games we've been playing, just a few. I did have a couple things I wanted to mention. Speaking of video games and horror, I guess, if you haven't seen in the news, they've announced an Elden Ring board game.
Oh, yeah.
If you've watched Chit Chat, you've heard at least 2 of the 3 of us talk about Elden Ring at times. Sure. This one's coming from Steamforged, and they're going to be holding an event. Usually game companies, as you know, will send us games, send different content creators games. They're not doing that. They're holding an event here in a couple weeks in Manchester, England. There's a chance that one of us might be going there to check it out. So we're going to be bringing that information back, but they're going to be running a campaign. Again, I'm sure it's going to be a big miniatures game.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a dungeon crawly sort of game of that ilk, which is not my cup of tea generally, but I'm gaga for Elden Ring.
You definitely were.
So
I still love that
all right,
game.
we'll just stop that right there because this can go on way too long.
Snap? I forgot all about Marvel Snap.
So hopefully we'll bring you some more information about that game once we've uncovered some details. And then the last thing, and this is just something random that came up, but because we've been talking about the World Series of Board Gaming recently, I didn't realize this, but the Catan World Championship is coming up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's coming up on November 18th is when gameplay begins. And we'll have a link down below that you can go to when that happens. Yeah. Obviously, I assume it's going to be over a number of days. It's being held in Malta.
Oh, cool.
And I can't remember how many people they said was going to be there. Something like 87 people from all over the world who are going to be playing in this World Championship. I didn't even realize Did anyone realize there was a thing like that? I didn't know.
Qualify.
Are you going, Ryan? Because I've heard you're pretty good.
I love Catan. Our friend Artie, who hosts game nights, used to participate in the Catan World
Really?
He would go to all like the regional qualifiers and like work his way up. There's like nationals and and eventually you get sent to Worlds. So yeah, I actually am kind of familiar with how it works. I think even Gen Con, they do a qualifier.
Oh, do they?
I believe that.
It might not
makes
be
sense.
Various conventions throughout the year, they do qualifying events where you can kind of move into the next rank. So Catan's a big deal for people.
Well, I know.
I'm not that good at Catan.
I would never be there, no matter what the game was.
I would get destroyed at that level.
So anyway, let us know in the comments below anything you want. If you've played Marvel Snap, please let us know in the comments below.
You have. If you're watching this video, you've probably played Marvel Snap.
You know what? If you haven't played Marvel Snap, let us know in the comments below. And let us know if you tried it because you're watching this. Or let us know, you know what? I hated this episode because I didn't want to hear anything about non-board games, and you bored me to death.
It's kind of a board game.
Ad nauseum about Marvel Snap. I apologize kind of for that. But anyway, until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.